Hello everyone, welcome back to Geeks for Geeks. My name is Muskan Agarwal, and yes, this is a very interesting webinar. So I hope all of you must have already seen what this webinar is about from the title of the webinar itself. So we have Ranga with us, who is going to tell about Microsoft Azure for beginners, and he's also a content creator at Udemy and comes with a lot of experience. So like even I am a newbie in this field, so even I am very interested to learn different things about cloud computing and Microsoft Azure as well. But before I add him to the stream, just confirm me in the comment section if I'm perfectly visible and audible, because I do not want any network glitches in this particular webinar. Just give me a thumbs up and I will not waste a lot of your time and will quickly add him to the stream. Just give me a thumbs up if I'm perfectly visible and audible. Then we can start. Cool, all good. Cool. I'll add him to the stream now. Hi Ranga, how are
Muskan.
you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming to Geeks for Geeks and sharing about Microsoft Azure, cloud computing, DevOps. I am sure that even I have a lot to learn in this field, and I'm really looking forward to this webinar. Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure. It's a pleasure, Muskan. Glad to be here.
Yes. So I hope all the viewers that are there will already know about you because you're a content creator at Udemy and doing such great work. But still,
Thank
for
you.
the audience who do not know about you, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I founded in 28 minutes almost 5 years back. And today we teach almost 1 million learners on Udemy. We teach varied range of topics starting from programming, Spring Boot, Java, Python. And like over the last few years, we have shifted out to DevOps and cloud. So we teach certification courses on AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and also we have courses on Docker, Kubernetes. So almost most of the things which are happening in the in the cloud and DevOps world today, we actually create courses around them. So that's basically what I do: create content.
That is really great. I hope it is helping a lot of student community that is out there. Thank you so much for doing it.
I hope so too. Thanks a lot, Muskan.
So talking about cloud computing as a beginner, can you tell like if I am like someone who has just started or I just know the term cloud computing, can you explain what cloud computing is for an absolute beginner?
Absolutely. Right. So cloud computing is nothing but somebody else's computer.
Hmm.
Right. Usually, like what enterprises do is they have their own data center where they deploy applications to. But when I'm making use of the cloud or cloud computing, as they call it, I'm making use of infrastructure which is present somewhere else. Maybe AWS is hosting a few servers, or Azure is hosting a few servers, or Google Cloud is hosting a few servers. So instead of
Right.
deploying my applications to my own data center, I am deploying my applications to a data center which is present somewhere else, right? So that's basically what cloud computing is all about: deploying applications to some other to infrastructure which is hosted somewhere else.
Yeah. Sounds really interesting. And also a lot of companies are, adopting this cloud computing technology. So like why do you think cloud computing is necessary and why is everyone shifting towards it?
Absolutely right. Let's take two very simple use cases. Number one, let's look at a startup. Right, let's say that startup is now, let's say, having 1,000 users, but suddenly one day they went viral and they want to now support 100,000 users. Right, so they need infrastructure to support that. If they
Right.
are actually having infrastructure in their own data center, it's very difficult for them to get the infrastructure, set it up, and support 10 like 1 lakh users at the same time. Right, that's the reason why you would see a lot of startups today use cloud, because they
Hmm.
can start small, and if they become successful, they can easily expand out and increase the number of servers they want. Also look at the perspective of an enterprise. Let's look at the use case too. Right, an enterprise, like for example Amazon itself, is a very good use case. Right, during shopping peak periods, right, let's say Diwali sale or New Year sale, there are there is much more number of users on the website than, let's say, at midnight at 12 o'clock. So the amount of infrastructure they would need to support a peak volume might be 3 or 4 times the amount of infrastructure they need to support the minimum amount of volume, right?
Right.
So what enterprises and startups used to do before the cloud was they used to provision servers for peak volume. So whatever is the peak, they have infrastructure ready for it, and that's expensive because you need to have infrastructure bought ahead. And what is the guarantee that you are able to guess it right? You might be expecting 100,000 users, but it might end up that you have a million users, right? It's very, very difficult to predict a lot of times, right? So
Right.
like that was the problem. The challenge was you were not sure how much infrastructure you want to get, and also managing this infrastructure also is a headache. You need to have a team to maintain it, and it's not like infrastructure can live forever, right? The computer I'm making use of today is useless 5 years down the line. So the
Right.
same is the case with infrastructure. You need to keep upgrading the infrastructure over a period of time. And this is not what the enterprises want to focus on, right? If there is an insurance business or a shopping business or some other business, they want to focus on their business, not on infrastructure. So
Right.
that's what cloud enables. So cloud enables a lot of flexibility for enterprises and startup, and that's why it is becoming really popular these days.
Definitely. And I think it is something that, we should learn. Like, I think it is the need of the future. So, yeah, this is something that everyone should know about. Definitely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Then, talking about Microsoft Azure, what this webinar is about, can you tell what Microsoft Azure actually is? And, like, if you have to explain it to the beginner, because I'm sure, like, most of the viewers who are watching this are just getting into this field.
Absolutely. Yeah. Azure, like if you look at the cloud platforms which are popular, right? The
Right.
most popular one today, I would say, is a competition between AWS and Azure. And
Yeah.
the other one, which is popular, is Google Cloud. Right? These are the three top cloud providers, and Azure is an offering from Microsoft. And Azure is as good as all the other two, right? So Azure provides you with a lot of services, around 200 plus services. It provides you variety of services, whether you're talking about compute services, storage, databases, machine learning, data engineering. So whichever field you talk about, Azure offers services in that specific niche, right? So Azure, since the time Satya Nadella took over, I would say Azure has started doing really, really well. Before Satya Nadella, it was not so much, like AWS was really the leader. But since the time Satya Nadella came in, he started focusing a lot more on the cloud. And Azure started becoming one of the top two, if now I think I would say competing for top one. So like for a beginner, I think the important thing for you to know is that there are three cloud platforms: AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. And it does not matter which one you learn, right? All the three cloud platforms will do really, really well.
Yeah. Because like we're talking about AWS versus Azure, I see a lot of videos on YouTube, Azure versus AWS. And so, like, what do you think are the pros and cons? Like, if you have to specify any three cons of Microsoft Azure, what will it be?
Yeah, see, the way we would need to look at it, Muskan, is like two perspectives, right? One is enterprise, second is learners. How
Right.
do learners make a choice? Learners make the choice based on, okay, how many jobs will be available? Is that an interesting job? Is that something I like? Right? So that those would be like some of the factors that a beginner would take into consideration before they would choose which cloud platform. And
Right.
as far as I am concerned, I teach both, like all three, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, because I think all three will be among the top five even 10 years down the line. Right? It does not
Right.
matter which cloud it is, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. I mean, the order might change. It might be like instead of AWS being number one, Azure might be like maybe Google Cloud is number one. Nobody knows that, right? So the order of which cloud platform is more frequently used will change, but the number of jobs in each of these will be only going up. So
Right.
from a learner's perspective, I don't think it's very, very important for them to really worry about the differences between these when they're choosing which one to learn, right? Let's look at it from an enterprise perspective, right? From when you are an enterprise and you are choosing whether you want to go for Google Cloud or you want to use Azure or you want to use AWS, right? One of the main factors that people take into consideration is, are they a Microsoft shop or not? A lot of enterprises use only Microsoft technologies. If you're using Microsoft technologies like Microsoft SQL Server and all the tooling around that, then the recommended cloud for them to go to is Azure, right? So if you are using Microsoft related things already, you are a Microsoft shop, go for Azure. Does not, it's a very simple thing. However, like let's say if you are looking for analytics or if you're looking for machine learning and things like that, and also if you're looking at running Kubernetes is one of the popular container orchestration platforms. Those are the places where like Google Cloud is good at, right? So other than that, for most of the other cases, I think I would say all the three cloud platforms are really good in terms of features. It's mostly like the decisions, enterprise mostly make decisions based on not actually the features, not just the features, but also in terms of cost and a lot of other factors which would go into picture, right? So the
Definitely.
decision for an enterprise is pretty complex, but the decision for a learner is very simple. Choose one of them. It does not matter which one. Choose one of them and you will not be wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Also, is it easy to shift from one like suppose I'm learning AWS right now and then I have to shift to Azure. So how easy it is to shift from one platform to another?
Right. This is another frequently asked question for me, right? So a lot of people are interested in moving between the clouds, right?
Hmm.
For beginners, probably the comparison would be between languages, right? Let's say you
Right.
learn Java very well and you want to learn Python. You would see that if you know Java really, really well, shifting to Python is very, very easy. However, if you don't know Java well and you try to shift to Python, you'll only be confused. So the way I think about it is you should know a cloud very, very well before you move into another cloud. So I would say if I'm working on AWS today, right, I would want to work on AWS for at least a year, couple of years. Go have a good understanding of all the services which are present in there. Have a good understanding of how you can practically use AWS before you move into any other cloud. But
Right.
once you learn AWS really, really well, moving to Azure or Google Cloud is very easy. It's not
Hmm.
difficult at all. But it's important to focus on one. It's just the terminology which is different. The concepts are pretty similar.
Right. You should not shift very frequently, otherwise it will be like you're trying everything, but like you're master of none, right? So yeah, master
Exactly.
one and then shift.
And also, you will not be able to make sense, right? So, one of the key things when you want to learn something well and you want to remember it for a long time, right? Whenever you're trying something new, repeating, doing it again and again over a period of time is very, very important. For your brain to register something, it takes time. It's not like I read AWS today, I cleared a certification, I'll remember everything about it a week down the line or a month down the line.
Hmm.
Right? We tend to forget. And the only way you can remember that over a long time is to use it over a long time. So if you use the knowledge you gained on AWS for a long time, 1 year or 2 years, then it would ensure that all the knowledge you have gained will be useful for later part of your career. Otherwise, it might just be useful for a certification and you forget it. It will not be useful for it anymore.
Definitely. Also, as you mentioned that Azure is growing day by day. So, like, what could be the possible reasons for it? Like, what are all the changes that they have made, or like, what are the reasons
Yeah.
basically why Azure is growing exponentially?
Yeah, I won't say Azure is growing faster than other cloud providers, but Azure is growing fast. Let's put it that way, right? Azure is definitely
Right.
going fast because, in my opinion, actually Google Cloud is the fastest growing cloud, right?
Hmm.
So, like the reason why Azure is going fast is because cloud is growing really, really fast. A lot of enterprises today are moving towards the cloud, right? Today, almost I would say 70 to 80% of the enterprises are already making use of the cloud, and like even the other ones will use the cloud very, very soon. And like even the enterprises which are making use of the cloud today, maybe they are making use of the cloud only for 5 or 10% of their applications, but going forward it would increase 20, 30, and I would say in another 5 to 10 years almost 80 to 90% of all the enterprises and 80 to 90% of all the applications will be running in the cloud. And this is irrespective of the kind of workload, right? Whenever we talk about applications, typically we think it's web application or full stack application, right? It's not just that. You can also think about machine learning workloads. You can also think about data engineering workloads. You can think of any other kind of IoT things, right? A lot of those are finally, like the servers for them are finally hosted on the cloud. And that's the reason why like cloud is growing very, very fast, because it's not just the infrastructure, but also, let's say you would want to implement something like machine learning or IoT or data engineering. Cloud is providing you with so many services that implementing machine learning in the cloud is much easier than implementing machine learning without using the cloud. And also there is a lot of additional infrastructure benefits which are provided by the cloud, which makes it very, very easy to run things. And that's the reason why enterprises are adopting cloud. And that's the reason why each of the cloud platforms is growing, right? Azure has a big advantage in terms of a lot of people already are using Microsoft technologies. Azure also
Right.
has, Azure is part of Microsoft, right? And Microsoft has a lot of enterprise tie-ups with large enterprises. So those are another couple of factors which really, really work in favor of Azure.
Yeah. So, like, if I have to get started with working on Microsoft Azure, so what are the prerequisites, or what are few of the things that I should already know before, I start using it?
Right. So if you want to get started with the cloud, I would recommend you to be like, I'm talking about technical folks, right? So let's say you want to be developing applications and deploying them in Azure, or if you would want to architect applications for Azure. So we are talking about technical roles, right? I mean, Azure can be used by technical people and non-technical people as well. Like there are people like business analysts, there are people like salespeople, testers. Those also can make use of the cloud, and for them there is hardly any prerequisite. But if you would want to be able to deploy applications to the cloud, if you want to make use of DevOps services, in that kind of a scenario, it's good to have experience developing applications before, right? If you have programming experience, if you have applications experience building applications, web applications or full stack applications, that is very, very useful when you go to the cloud. You don't need to be master at that, but any programming experience that you have will really be useful when you go to the cloud.
Okay, I can see there are a lot of questions in the comment section. So yeah, maybe let's try to take few of the questions.
Sure, Muskan.
Yes. So people are asking, what is the benefit of cloud computing? I think you've already taken up this question, but still, if you want
Absolutely.
to, tell any 3 points, three of the benefits of using cloud computing.
Exactly. Like typically low costs, like allowing you to focus on your business and not on infrastructure, and also making implementation of very difficult things easier. For example, machine learning, or like if you want to run Kubernetes, or if you want to implement a data engineering workload, those kind of things are much more easier in the cloud.
Okay. Then there's a question around Azure versus AWS again. I think we've already discussed about it. Like if you're a beginner, choose any one instead of, deciding which one to choose.
Exactly. If you're not sure, look at what kind of support you have, right? So if you know seniors who have done a specific cloud and who are doing well, and you're sure you'd be able to get their help when needed, go for it. Go for that specific cloud. It does, like, it's about finding out in your circle where can you find help for which cloud do you think you will get really good support for, because then your job search also will become easier.
Right. Then I had this one question, that if you have to state any three commonly made mistakes that you see that students make when they are getting started with cloud computing or when they are learning it in their initial phases, what are they?
Yeah. Number one is the one which we already talked about, switching from one cloud to another cloud without knowing a specific cloud really, really well. So I would recommend you to focus on a specific cloud, understand it really, really well before you move into another cloud. So spend some time making that choice, but once you make that choice, stick to it. That's number one. Number two, I would say, is a lot of people think learning cloud is difficult. Actually, learning cloud is very, very easy. If you are able to learn programming, like I would, like I'm a believer that learning programming takes years. However, learning cloud takes a few months, right? So to be really, really good at programming takes a long time, but cloud is nothing but somebody else's computer. You need to understand security, you need to understand networking, and you need to understand some of the services which are present in the cloud. But using the cloud is much, much more easier. Learning cloud is much, much more easier. So that's number two. And number three is not going hands on with it very, very soon, right? So a lot of beginners just focus on the certifications. Certifications are good, but it's very, very important to have hands-on knowledge. You should know how to deploy applications to the cloud. You should build a GitHub profile for yourself. So it's very, very important to demonstrate your experience with using a cloud provider. And that's where I think GitHub profiles really, really help. So if you have a GitHub profile where you actually have a list of projects you have deployed to cloud and you made use of them, I think that would be a great thing to add. So in addition to certifications do help, but don't stop with certifications. Go further and actually deploy applications to the cloud and learn that.
Yeah, learning while doing. I think this helps me also a lot. Like if I have to learn something, I'll try to make a smallest project in that, and that is how
Absolutely.
I learn.
Absolutely. That, and also it helps you to remember things for a long time. The
Right.
thing is, if you don't do it, and like if you like they say, like this is my favorite quote, kind of, right? So if you read something, you might remember it for a few days, but if you read and do it, then you will remember it for a few weeks. If you read, do it, and you revise it once every few days, then you will remember it forever. Right?
Yeah.
So it's about do, like if you do it and you kind of revise it quickly once in an off, like very often, then it really, really helps. For example, today, like one of my tasks I set myself is to remember all the AWS services, Google Cloud services, and Azure Cloud services. So what I do is I have a printout, and this is a 25-page printout. So I keep looking at it once in a while so that I remember them. So if somebody says, what is the Kubernetes service in AWS, I can immediately say it's EKS, right? So that's what I want to be able to build. And because I do it repeatedly, now I know almost all the cloud services names, which use case, what is the right scenario to use them across multiple clouds without a confusion. And
Hmm.
that's only possible because I started with one cloud, and now like I added slowly other clouds in, and I continuously revise that.
Definitely. Also, talking about learning, I think there are so many courses available online on, for cloud computing, DevOps, and for AWS, Microsoft Azure. And as a student, sometimes it is very overwhelming. Like, I do not know what course to choose. So, what will you suggest? And also, there are like paid courses and there are free courses. So, like, how should I differentiate between the two? Which one should I take and which one should I not?
Exactly, right? So one of the most important things that somebody who's getting into IT need to learn is what works for them. What kind of learning approach works for them is the most important thing that you can figure out, right? Earlier, like when I was starting my career, as you said, the only things which I had was books, and that's what I used to read, right? I use books even today. Most of the times I use books to read. That's what makes me happy, and also that's what I like. So that's the thing which I worked out for myself. If I want to go and see some kind of demo and that kind of stuff, I go online, but most of the other times I go for books. But that's something which works for me. Similar to that, you need to figure out what works for you, right? It's not a question of free or paid course. The most important question you need to ask is how much time you are investing, right? A lot of people don't take their own time and the cost associated with their own time, right? So if I was working for 8 hours, I would be able to earn x amount. Instead of that, I'm learning, right? If I'm using a free course and I'm spending additional 10 hours or 20 hours because of that, then I'm wasting my time, right? So that also is a balance that you need to start thinking about, right? It's not about, if you think something is really, really good and you learn the fastest that way, you should not hesitate to invest a little bit of money and go towards that. But that does not mean that all paid courses are better than free courses, right? So there is amazing free content out there. Whether we talk about YouTube, whether we talk about Azure documentation itself, there is a lot of amazing documentation. For example, Microsoft Learn offers amazing documentation on each of the Azure certifications. If you want to do AZ 900, DP 900, or AI 900, any of the beginner certifications, or even the advanced Azure certifications, the Azure Learn portal provides you with a lot of things, right? And the second thing is, Azure also offers a free tier. Like each of the cloud platforms offer a free tier. Azure also offers you with a free tier. So you can use Azure for free. They provide you with almost $200 of free credit. You create an account, give them credit card and debit card details, and you would be able to use Azure for almost a month without paying anything, right? So that's another opportunity which every beginner can make use of. Now, like what works, like I think the options are very, very easy, right? So the options are documentation, reading like the Microsoft Learn like documentation. That's one place you can start. A lot of videos on YouTube these days. There is amazing content out there. If you just search for AZ900, you'd see a lot of really good videos related to that. You can go to Coursera, you can go to Udemy, right? My courses are hosted on Udemy, but I would say all the platforms offer amazing courses, right? So it's about working out what works for you, because cloud or like programming or DevOps is just the first thing you are learning. Over a period of your career, like if you're getting into IT, the learning is never ending, right? Like when I started off my journey, probably if I knew Java, that was more than sufficient. But today, the expectation are if you want to get into industry, there are a lot of things you need to know. And the only way you can learn all that is by learning on your own. That's the fastest way. And you need to work out what is the best thing that works for you. So I would rather say try and figure it out for yourself. I would say like one of the best approaches I would suggest is like take a week, one day. Like if I'm learning something Azure, right? Azure is something which is really, really important for my career. It's not something, if I choose to learn Azure, then it means I would want to use Azure for a long period of time. So I would be ready to invest a little bit of time to choose what works for me. So what I'll do is I'll spend 2 hours reading the documentation. I'll spend 2 hours next day looking at YouTube videos. Maybe I'll trial a Udemy course. I'll trial a Coursera course, right? And see what is the thing which I learned the most from. What is the thing which kept me engaged? What is the thing that interested me? And then continue with that approach. Because unless you trial all, you don't know what is the advantage of which one, right? So just go, give it a try and see what works for you. So figuring that out is very, very important. And as a learner, as a beginner, as somebody who's starting off their computer science careers, right, that's the number one thing you would want to focus on. What is the thing which works for you? Do you like reading books? Do you like watching videos, courses, or is there a specific instructor you like, right? So try and figure that out. And if you are able to find an instructor who you like, and if they are covering a lot of subjects related to what you are planning to learn, that's the best thing, because you don't, after that you don't really have a problem, right? So that's the question, right? Figuring out what is the most efficient way to learn for you, and that's difficult, that's not easy, right? It takes a few months typically for you to figure out. um, I think you are on mute.
Yeah, really sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, I was saying that something might that will work for us might not work for you. So like each and everyone have to try it on their own, right? To
Exactly.
know, right? Okay. So then Priya has asked also, is it mandatory to practice to buy the subscription?
Actually, to buy is not needed. Actually, you will get a free subscription if you
Hmm.
actually create a new account. So if you create an Azure account, you get a free subscription, and the free subscription I think will be valid for 30 days. And after that, if you'd want, you can buy a subscription.
Then Priya has asked that she's a Java backend developer with 10 years of experience. So, what Azure courses would be good for her? She has worked on Azure App Services, Logic Apps, and Function Apps.
Awesome, awesome. I think that means she has really good experience on Azure. Uh, like I would recommend, like I think you can skip the fundamental level certifications. I don't think AZ900, DP900, and AI900 would have any value for you. I would recommend you to go with either the developer or the architect certification. So like I think those, one of those certifications might be a really good starting point for you, Priya. I think because you are experienced, you don't want to go to the fundamentals unless you are interested in going towards data or other things. I think it's better to go towards architecture because you have significant experience. So I would say probably I would recommend architect certification. Azure architect certification might be the best fit for you.
So then, one second. The questions are repetitive, guys. We have already, like, whatever questions I can see in the comment section, we've already answered those in the initial half. So maybe you can watch the video after the stream has ended on YouTube. And yes, your questions are answered. So people are asking what are one of the like three of the top skills for a cloud engineer that the company is looking for when they are hiring for these roles.
Right. So I think the first thing is like having some demonstrable experience, right? So having applications that you have deployed on the cloud and making them as part of your GitHub profile. So that's number one. So having real time experience using the cloud and being able to demonstrate that. So that's number one. Typically, if you look at most of the beginners, they would be playing with compute services. Like basically, like compute services are basically like your virtual machines, right? So you would, like, for example, if I would want to deploy an application, the first thing I would need is a computer. And like typically, like the servers are huge, and on the same server you can create a number of virtual servers, virtual machines, and that's why these are called virtual machines. So virtual machine is the most basic compute service. Other than that, Azure also provides you with a number of managed services. Like Priya was saying, app services, Azure App Services is one of the managed services. Azure also provides a Kubernetes service, right? So those might be some of the best places for people who are building applications to start. And another area where you might want to dive deeper is into databases, right? A lot of us have played with a lot of databases like MySQL, Oracle, and things like that. So you can create a database in the cloud. You can Azure also has NoSQL databases, so you can play with NoSQL database as well, Cosmos DB in Azure. So those might be some of the places where you can start. One of the important things is when you're going towards the cloud, it's very, very important to understand how the security of the cloud works and also how networking works in the cloud. Typically, we don't worry about them if we are not using the cloud, because like a lot of times those are automatically taken care of for you. But when you're going to the cloud, you need to have a good understanding of networking and security as well. So I would start with compute, storage, databases, networking, and security. So those would be the services I would want to start off with, uh, so that I can build applications, deploy, and play with it.
Yeah, so I hope your question was answered, Priya. Then Alfred has asked that cloud engineering is becoming a top skill and he needs to add it to his skill set. So where should he start, and Azure or AWS again, and what is the best path for this?
Exactly. Right. So if I would say, if like either of them, AWS or Azure is the best place to start. Right. There is no one answer to it. Right. If you look at IT, a lot of things are like that. Right. AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, Java or Python or JavaScript. Like there, if you are good at any of those, you have jobs waiting for you. Full stack or web application or mobile or artificial intelligence or machine learning, data engineering, any of these, if you are in the top 5% of people, you will get jobs. You will get really, really good jobs. But the question is always, it's not about what to choose, but what do you like? What do you think you can be in the top 5% for? Right? That's the question you need to ask yourself. If there are 100 people pursuing something, which of these can you be in the top 5% for? And that's how you need to choose, right? Let's say you chose that, and let's say the answer came out to be Azure, right? In that case, I would say, if you have no idea about Azure, I would say the Azure fundamental certifications would be the best place to start with Azure. AZ 900 Azure fundamentals, AZ DP 900 Azure data fundamentals, and AI 900 Azure AI fundamentals. Those would be the three certifications you can start with. I think the great thing about those certifications is that they give you a complete overview of the cloud. They give you a complete overview of the technology landscape as well. You will understand what are containers, container orchestration, what is data engineering, what is artificial intelligence, what is machine learning, and the entire landscape. And then you can deep dive into any of the things which interests you. So after doing these three certifications, if you think, okay, I would want to go deeper into data, there are data certifications. If you think, okay, no, I would want to go into compute, there are specific certifications related to that. Or if you think architecture is what you like, you can go towards architect certifications. So yeah, start with the fundamental certifications and then go into like one of the deeper areas. And most importantly, whether you're pursuing certifications or not, it's very, very important to make sure that you are doing hands-on. So whatever applications you are building, so if you're building a web application, or if you're building a full stack application, if you're building a mobile application, you need to know how to put it to Azure, how to deploy it to Azure, right? So that skill you need to definitely have.
Yes. And talking about certifications, I can see a lot of questions like where can they practice questions for AZ 900 certification exam? If you can
Okay.
suggest.
Cool. So I think there are a lot of practice tests which are available for AZ 900, right? So if you go in Udemy and just search for practice tests, there are a huge number of practice tests which are available in AZ 900. Even our course, like at the end of our course, there is a practice test which is available. Typically, I would say AZ 900 is easy exam, right? So if you understand like whatever is taught as part of the course, or if you completed the Azure Learn website completely, it is very very difficult to fail that exam.
Then Neeraj has asked that as a data engineer, which cloud database should he learn as a beginner?
Okay, so I would say, like, if you are starting off from zero, and if you have no like knowledge about data engineering at all, I would say DP 900, Azure Data Fundamentals would be the best place to start. And like one of the most important things that you need to learn is how to choose a database. Depending on the use case, you would want to go for a relational database, analytical database, or a NoSQL database. So you need to learn how to make that choice. If I would have to pick one database, probably you can start with a NoSQL database, Cosmos DB. I think that might be a good place to start exploring all the NoSQL options which are present in, especially because today NoSQL is becoming much more popular.
Yes, definitely. Then Piyush has asked that if you have to suggest any best book or documentation for AWS for beginners or any online course that you can suggest for it.
No, I doubt I have not actually, like, I've read certification books on AWS, but I don't think they are the best books for a beginners to start. They expect you to have certain knowledge, and then they take you to like much more expertise. So I doubt if there are any really good books on AWS for beginners. But as far as the online courses go, I think AWS has a good like course on its own. Like if you just search for AWS Cloud Practitioner on Google, you should land up on the AWS course for Cloud Practitioner. And obviously, I have my own courses as well. So we have our courses on Udemy, which you might want to try. You can see if you like them, right? So yeah, I think there are a lot of options out there. I would recommend you to actually try and figure out what works for you.
Yeah, as you already mentioned, try everything and then in the end choose whatever you find the best. Definitely.
Exactly.
Then Ritik is asked, do network management and cloud go together?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think cloud, when you go to cloud, networks is very, very important, because think about this, right? Uh, Earlier, enterprises used to have their own data center. Therefore, if I'm deploying my application on a specific machine, I can be sure that that machine only has applications running from my enterprise. I know that it does not have any applications which are running from which belong to some other enterprise. But today that's not the case, right? The server which I'm deploying my application to might be having like virtual machines belonging to other customers as well, and therefore security is very very important, and network management is very very important part of ensuring security. So creating vnets, creating subnets, understanding how routing works, that's very very important. This is not like very deep networks, like switching and all that stuff might not be needed, but having a high level overview of network management is very very important.
I've taken all the questions that were there in the comment section. We will wait for another 10 seconds if there will be any other question. Also, like
Awesome.
I'm also a beginner, so I'm also getting to learn a lot. Like I don't know much about this field. So yeah, this was very helpful for me as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think
Uh,
like cloud is something which is really here to stay, right? So it's
yes.
very very important. I mean, if you are looking at from somebody who wants to build a technical career, I would say programming is the number one thing that they would want to focus on, right? You want to be good at developing applications, you would want to be able to good you would want to be good at solving problems. So that's what you need to focus on initially. But once you are good at it, I think then cloud helps you really really like to take your profile to the next level.
Right, and as you mentioned initially that students generally think that learning cloud is difficult. I think I also think the same, but yeah, like you said that if you learn programming, then like you can learn cloud in 1 month. I think that has really motivated me, and I will
Absolutely.
try to learn it from now on.
I mean, like my courses, like for example, my AZ 900 course is titled AZ 900 in a weekend, DP
Okay.
900 in a weekend, AI
Weekend.
900 in a weekend. That's how confident I am that people can complete them in a weekend, right? So I'm saying, like, if you work for 20 hours, you should be able to get one of those certifications. Those are not difficult at all, especially if you have a little bit of technical knowledge, if you know how computers work, if you know a little bit of programming knowledge. I'm pretty confident that you'll be able to easily get those certifications. But important thing to realize is that there's the starting point. Certifications are just the starting point.
Right.
But once you get that knowledge, you need to use that to get the practical thing.
I think we have taken all the questions. So before I end this webinar, if lastly you would want to give any 3 tips to the students who are planning to start with cloud computing, or any tips you have for them.
Yeah. See, if you are choosing a technical career, number one thing you need to understand is that things will change. If I'm saying Azure is popular today, 5 years down the line, something else might be popular. So the important thing that you need to understand is that if you're getting into technical careers, you are setting yourself up for lifelong learning. You have to keep learning almost continuously throughout your career. And therefore, it's very, very important to work out what learning approaches work for you. Right? So try and figure out what works for you. What is the most efficient approach that works for you? So that's the number one thing. Number two, uh, whenever you are learning something, whenever you're trying to choose something, try and spend some time and choose one thing, right? If I'm, let's say, choosing between AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud, spend some time while you make the decision. Like typically, like I divide it into two phases, right? Whenever I want to learn next thing, the first thing is the decision making phase. The second thing is the learning phase. Separate the decision making phase from the learning phase, right? Decision making phase, let's say I give 5 days. So in those 5 days, I find all the information I needed, like spend all the time, talk to people, figure out what I want to learn. But once I figure out what to learn, I don't worry about it. The next thing is getting into learning phase. A lot of people actually mix these two phases continuously. Decision making, learning, decision making, learning, decision making, learning. You end up learning nothing, right? So it's very, very important to be clear about what you want to learn. You cannot learn everything which is out there. You cannot learn 100 different tools which are popular today. The important thing for you to understand is that whichever things we talked about in this today, or whichever things we are talking about on the GFG channel, right? Any of those topics, if you are in the top 5% for, you will get a job. You will get a really, really good job. But the important thing for you to decide is which one of them is something which interests you and something you can be in the top 5% for. Once you make that decision, focus on it and become the top 5%. You don't switch a lot from here to there. So yeah, those would be the two things I would recommend people to follow, right? So spend some time choosing. Once you choose, be stable with that decision.
Yes. Thank you so much for for your valuable advice. I hope it helps out a lot of students who are getting started in this field, or they were working professionals as well whose doubts were solved. Thank you so much for doing it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Muskan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys, who are watching this, for staying till the end. I can see a lot of students and people who are still there. So thank you so much for joining with us. We will see you in the next webinar.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Yes, thank you so much again, guys, for joining. And yes, we have provided the link for the course, though, so do not forget to register for the cloud computing course. And it covers a lot of different aspects of cloud computing, DevOps. It is really amazing. Do not forget to register for that. And yes, I will see you in the next webinar. Till then, bye.